What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Unless you're brand new to the water cooling scene or you've been hiding under a rock for the past few months, you've probably already seen pictures or video of the new PrimoChill VUE coolant. Prior to launch, PrimoChill really hyped this stuff up. They were teasing us with pictures, little videos. They even shipped some of the fluid out to some of the other tech tubers, and they were able to run it in their systems to sort of help them kind of test it before launch, but also build up some hype around it. So naturally, like probably most of you guys, I was excited to get my hands on some of it. So as soon as it became available, I went ahead and ordered some bottles. Now, if you guys are following me on Instagram, you probably saw that I picked up the sterling silver, the gray, and the steel blue. I've been running the steel blue in my personal system for the past couple weeks, and I haven't exactly been happy with it, but not necessarily for the reason that you guys might think. Now, I think one of the biggest reasons that people were so excited about the release of PrimoChill VUE is that it's very similar to Mayhems Aurora, a product that's already been on the market for years that people really like as far as how it looks, but Aurora has the major downside of not being recommended to run in your system for any longer than, say, a couple months. It's really only meant for show use. Mayhems even explicitly says that on the label. So it's kind of disappointing when you have such a neat looking fluid that you can't really run in your system for any long period of time. Now, so far, according to all of their testing and some of the other people that have been reviewing the fluid for a duration of time, the PrimoChill VUE seems to offer the same sort of look as the Mayhems Aurora, with none of the negative side effects of running it in your loop for a long period of time. Now, I've used Mayhems Aurora in a few of my previous builds. You guys can scroll down to some of the older videos on the channel if you want to check those out. I've used the blue and the red. But now that I've had a chance to use the PrimoChill VUE, since I still have some of the Mayhems Aurora on hand, I figured it'd be a good opportunity to do a little bit of a comparison video so I can sort of show you guys some of the differences between the two. Now, before I start talking about each of these fluids specifically, I want to make sure you guys understand this video is not meant to be a comparison in performance. I'm more or less going to be talking about what to expect as far as how these fluids look in your system and maybe how they behave based on my hands-on experience. So you're going to be hearing a lot of my opinions. I might even make some assumptions, so feel free to take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. Alright guys, so what you're looking at here is Mayhems Aurora blue on the right and PrimoChill VUE steel blue on the left. As you can see at rest, both of them just sort of look like a pastel color. You can see a little bit of shimmering in the Aurora, although I assure you after sitting for a period of time that'll go away because Aurora does settle. And the VUE, because of its unique properties, when it stops moving you don't really see the effect. So I'm going to go ahead and stir each of them up so we can kind of compare what each of them looks like while they're in motion, and then we'll kind of talk about what I've observed as far as the differences go. So we'll start with the VUE here. As you can see, very pronounced sort of, I don't even know what you want to call this effect, but and I think what you'll see is that Aurora, when stirred up, has a pretty similar effect. I would say the effect is almost identical. You know, when in motion, they pretty much look the same. Seems like the VUE gets excited a little bit easier. I feel like that's probably due to the nature of how these fluids are made up. But when your system's flowing, I think you're essentially going to see the same effect. Now, right off the bat, and granted, we're not comparing apples to apples here, but you can see that the Aurora is a much more vibrant color. Whether it's moving or not, the blue color is just, it really hits you in the face. It's a really neat color. It probably doesn't look as cool on camera as it does in person, but I can assure you, having this in a system that was at a show, people were just like dropping their jaws at what this fluid looks like. And again, this is called steel blue, and you know, I can't really knock them too hard because I'm sure PrimoChill wasn't trying to exactly copy the Mayhems, but the color itself is just, it's not as vibrant. Regardless of what sort of shade of blue they were going for, it just doesn't have the same level of richness that the Aurora has. So that's, in a nutshell, why I'm not really happy with it in my system. And I suspect what's happening here, and again, this is where I'm going to start making some assumptions. Aurora has these particles that are just sort of suspended in the fluid, and this is what makes it bad in terms of running in your system for any period of time. And I can promise you guys, because I've cleaned out multiple systems with this stuff in it, it does not take long for the silvery particles in this stuff to just start coating pretty much the inside of every component in your build. Now, it wipes out easily with a paper towel, but you have to take everything apart and clean it out. So I can't attest for what happens if this stuff starts to clog up inside of your blocks. I think that that might be a concern if it's in there for a long time, but I'm not really going to comment on that because I don't know how long it takes for that to happen. But I can promise you in a very short amount of time, you're going to be cleaning this stuff out, and that can be frustrating. From what I've seen with the VUE, based on other people's testing, that's not going to be the case here. So that's going to be the huge benefit between the two. And I suspect it's just the way that the fluid is made. Whereas I just mentioned that there's just kind of these silvery particles mixed in here. In fact, you can buy what's called Aurora Booster that's just in a tiny little 1-ounce squirt bottle, and you can add it to pretty much any of Mayhem's fluids. And depending on the color, you're going to get varying degrees of this effect. But that just goes to show it's just more or less an additive to a fluid, whereas this is more of a, I would say, solution. It almost seems like there's two different fluids with different viscosities that are sort of like mixed somehow. I think that's why it doesn't settle. It just kind of stays suspended. I guess that if it is indeed two different, fluids, let's call it, they must share a similar or identical density so that one of them does not settle into the other. But the downside to that is, obviously, to get this shimmering effect, the secondary color is going to be that kind of grayish silver color. And since it's distributed evenly throughout the fluid, it sort of dulls the color, which goes back to my original comparison between the vibrancy of these two colors. Again, this is where I'm going to be making assumptions, but I have not seen any of the other quote-unquote colors in person, but I would assume you're going to see a similar effect with any of the other colors, say purple, red, green, you name it. If you add silver or gray to any one of those colors, you're going to dull it to an extent to where it's not necessarily going to have the vibrancy that the color would have without this sort of effect in there. Now, that being said, I do have the silver and the gray, and I would also think this will apply to the white. I think those are going to be the best bet for PrimoChill VUE because you don't have to worry about the gray or the silver dulling a pre-existing color. Now, don't get me wrong, the effect is amazing. I think that most of you would be very happy with this fluid. I'm a little bit picky, and I was sort of comparing it to my previous experiences with the Aurora, where I just felt that it had a much more vibrant sort of color to it. I don't really think that that's opinion either. I mean, it's just a fact. You guys can see it here. And it's not because, PrimoChill sucks at making colors. They weren't necessarily trying to match this color, but I think because of the nature of how this is made up, it almost kind of looks like a powder blue. And again, I don't know how it shows up on video, but I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what it looks like moving around in my system. I'm not going to show the system off too much because I'm still waiting to do a video on that system, but before I do that, I'm going to swap fluid. I think I'm going to get rid of the steel blue I'm just simply not happy with the color. I'm going to try out the sterling silver and see what that looks like. So here you see it moving around inside the system. Like I said before, the effect is really neat. I think this fluid looks awesome. There's something to be said for being able to see the fluid running through the tubing. You guys may remember that my original iteration of this build, I had brass tubing all the way throughout, but before I put the VUE in, I went ahead and swapped some of the tubes out for acrylic so that we could see some of this effect as it moves through the tubes. So yeah, so I guess in a nutshell, it's not that I'm not happy with the fluid, I'm just not happy with the color. And I suspect, again, this is an assumption, but I would bet that any of the other sort of basic colors are going to suffer from the same sort of dimming effect, where the silverish gray portion of the fluid kind of dulls the overall vibrancy that you're going to get from it. Not to say the effect still isn't cool, but if you're looking for a very deep, rich color, I don't think you're going to get that from the VUE. You may have a different experience. If it's UV reactive, obviously it's going to glow, and that's not really going to matter. But if you're going for a sort of color palette, I would just say beware, because this is 25 bucks a bottle. It's on the more expensive end of the spectrum as far as fluids go. So if you're worried that, you know, you're not going to like it and you don't know if you want to spend 25 bucks on it, maybe consider going with like the silver, gray, or the white, or a UV, because in my opinion, the colored ones, again, this is my opinion, they're a little dull. So there you have it, guys. Whether you were considering buying PrimoChill VUE or Mayhems Aurora, or you were just simply curious, I hope you found this video helpful. As always, if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.